Listeners, Howard and I spoke with the CEO of a storied New York mid-sized corporate law firm. We discussed her European upbringing and how her many years as an executive in consulting and public accounting firms and all the changes those industries continue to face, how this experience prepared her for her new role at her firm and for the changes coming to the legal industry. Enjoy. So, welcome, Rebecca, to the Future is Bright podcast. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you, Howard and Chris, today.
Rebecca, I am very excited about this conversation. I think you have a fun background, a fun story. My listeners will find a lot to learn from in your journey. Um, just to kind of begin with, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, where you're from, some of that foundation of what made some of your story come to light.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am actually, I was born in the UK, despite the fact that I now sound Australian. We'll get into that later. I was born in the UK, and then I moved to German-speaking Switzerland to go to school in my mid-teens. Went to school there. It's super interesting learning a new culture, new language. Even in the UK, we always grew up with multiple visitors from all around the world. So I was very much exposed to that at an early age, and I was very curious to learn about other cultures and different people. I lived there for a little while, maybe 5 years, and then moved to the south of France. Went to school there, learned French, learned French literature in a crash course to get through the exams at the end of the year, and then ultimately moved to Paris to study initially psychology. So a lot of learning about different cultures and different people, and I'm passionate about that still to this day.
What did your parents do, or how come the traveling around?
So my parents are both teachers and writers.
Okay,
Ultimately, they wrote school books that you would find in school for languages and history.
interesting.
They were the authors for that, and yeah, that's what led to the travel. I think it was a professional side of things, but also just personally, they also loved travel and living in different places, and that really there's no limit to where you could be in the world.
It's amazing. And you so happened to pick up languages along the way, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, so I would say it's partially survival and partially passion. Um, so, if you want to make it anywhere and be able to communicate and connect with people, you need to be able to speak the language. And it also gives you really good insight into the culture, right? If there are a lot of things you
Mm,
can't actually translate from one language to another. There's difficult to translate certain sayings or certain words, and that's really where the cultural differences lie. And to be able to learn that is essential for survival. Like I said, getting through school and being able to order a coffee, and to be able to connect and get to know people, which is really crucial to me and always has been.
So when did you move back to the States then?
So I moved back to the States. My oldest son was 2, so it's about 13 years ago.
Okay.
13, 14 years ago. And that was supposed to be a 3-year gig as an expat. Basically, I was supposed to come over and help integrate the US firm, get the Americans to work with the French. Basically, it was kind of the mandate, and grow the platform so that we could serve international clients, publicly traded entities, and kind of international clients. So that was about, and that's why I now sound Australian because it's been about 13 years, and you have to adapt to the environment.
So how was that transition? I mean, that must have been a mega move for you.
It's funny because some people look at it and think it's not a big transition because, we speak English here and what does looking American feel like? We're all American. This is all different ways that you can be American. It was a transition, but I have to say 99.9% of it was just amazing in terms of professionally. I love New York. I love the energy in New York. I love the business mindset here. Um, just how dynamic things are. I love the direct aspect to communication in the American culture. I think it's fantastic. You can just be very straight to the point and be very much all business, which I really like. You don't have to kind of beat around the bush. It's very effective communication, which is, you know, each culture is different, but I love that about the US. And I think just the opportunities are vast here. So I have to say it was a big transition, but it was really up my alley.
And you have a background in clinical psychology. How has that aided your journey?
It's interesting when I talk about that, and I don't generally lead with it, but I've learned to really kind of show people that how to bridge the gap in terms of really how I built up my career. Um, like I said earlier, I'm passionate about people and communication and getting to understand people. So it was a natural for me to study clinical psychology. I did a dual diploma in organizational psych and clinical psychology. And being in the hospital environment, it was very interesting and obviously very impactful, but there's a limited impact you can have from a practitioner to patient or client standpoint if the organization is dysfunctional or if there are areas of improvement. And that's where I really realized I wanted to go back to business school and have an impact on the organization and to see that ripple effect on every single role within the organization, right? So if you fix how the hospital functions and how all of their processes work and how the teams work together, ultimately the impact on the your client or your patient is magnified in a positive way. So to your question specifically, I would say in my day to day, it's huge. I'm part of the chief organization, a women's organization for executive leaders,
Hmm.
and our coach asked me recently, how much do you think is, of your roles are relationship or people focused? And I said at least said conservatively 70 to 80%. And she was very surprised. And we had a good discussion as a group because I do think, and especially in leadership roles, it's a given that you understand the industry. It's a given that you
Hmm.
understand how to do the role, right? That you understand operations, you understand how to put together a strategy, but to get people to buy in, to want to work together, to want to work with you, that requires really understanding people and putting yourself in other people's shoes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, and I would assume um, that's been honed and now is kind of a superpower for you.
Yes, and it's work in progress. I feel like the older I get, the more I realize how much I don't know, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So I'm constantly, I think it's something I've become good at and that I really, it's always come up in discussions, as I was evolving in my career, that was a strength of mine, the relationship side of things. But I'm also now honing in on the areas that I still need to continue to learn and improve on. And it just feels like a never ending kind of learning journey in that sense.
So
There's always something new.
what's
Yeah.
been that superpower like when you did your stint at public accounting? Because that's in a totally different environment.
Yeah, it is and it's not. Like to me, I think if you can lead a firm, you could learn the technical aspects, not to downplay how specialized these roles are, but it's not we're not doing, neurosurgery or something that requires, deep, 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 deep multiple years of knowledge on a very, very specific topic. So I think that there are a lot of similarities actually, especially within professional services, that translate very well. Um, I think the relationship side of things was key, especially in all types of environments, quite frankly, like whether it's the big accounting firms I've been at or the mid-market accounting firms, being able to create teams that are highly productive, that are, with diverse individuals from all walks of life, being able to work together and getting people to not just buy in, but really co-construct a shared vision, right? Really build out a strategy that everyone has had their imprint on, and then getting people to really pay it forward. I mean, it's been very similar in each of my roles, quite frankly, and
So
especially in roles where I didn't have formal reporting lines, right? When I was initially like a chief of staff or within a project management group, I really had to hone the skill of getting people to want to work with me. Like when you work on a project and really how do you get people to want to work with you? And that's a skill I've kept now because it's not because you have the title necessarily that people are going to want to work with you. So really being mindful of how to create an environment where people do feel safe and want to work with you.
and what was the biggest revelation or surprise when you again spent some time in the accounting world?
There are a few things, but I think I would say back to basics, right? I know we've in our prep call we spoke a little bit about our shared passion for executive education and ongoing learning. And there's always so much, you can learn from a theoretical standpoint, but I'm always surprised. It's really important to have reminders and back to basics on things, right? You kind of forget the things that you've learned before, and just simple examples, right? If you're talking about strategy, having a strategic plan, those things aren't necessarily always implemented. The things that we know we should be doing, it's like when you say, okay, you need to eat healthy and work out. We all know that, right? But then in the execution of things, that isn't necessarily always the case. Not for us, obviously, but for other people who don't execute on those things. Um, yeah, I think it's that there's really, in any role I've been, it's really going back to basics and relentless follow up. Relentless, if it doesn't get done this way, how do we find another way to get it done? Like relentless follow through and resourcefulness. I think those are things that, I guess it's surprising in a way, that most firms don't have these things put in place, but it's also not when you understand human nature and kind of what happens. You get sucked into the day to day and you focus on your silo. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
It does. So you touched on lifelong learning and going back to the basics. How have you continued to um, invest in yourself through this journey?
Mhm.
And has that been inspired by others? Are you inspiring others to do the same? Is it expected within the culture of the CPA firms you're at?
So, in my prior life, I would say in one of the firms I was at, it was definitely kind of a tone of ongoing learning. We actually developed an executive MBA that was accredited within the organization, right? So that was definitely the case. Um, I then realized later on in my career that I was encouraging others to do things that I wasn't doing. And I had to kind of have a bit of a reality check there of like, I'm telling everyone else that they should be doing all of these things, and I'm not doing it myself. I wasn't necessarily prioritizing it. And that's where I really intentionally put in place a plan for myself in terms of executive education. So, really trying to stay ahead and upskilling myself on the skill, the requirements of a future leader, what's going to be required of me to be able to support my team appropriately. Um, and then just, it's quite frankly a mindset that I've always had that sometimes got me in trouble because I would just ask too many questions, but I'm keeping it as it is anyway because I like it. It's to be super curious and to basically,
Mhm.
I'm constantly looking at things with the eye of a tourist. That's
So
that's kind of how I would describe it. Yeah.
so then tell us about the journey about how you wound up in legal services, because what you've done in the past, you've had this is probably what your third career in effect.
Yeah, at least, yeah, because I used to be so I was clinical psychologist, then went into consulting. I didn't know much to really consult on, but I realized that questions were powerful. Questions are powerful, and I learned a lot through that. And then I went into public accounting, CPA firms internationally, huge CPA firm. And then I went into the mid-market CPA firms, and now I'm in law firms. How did I get there? I would say I looked at the market and I could see where things were going with private equity
Mhm.
investing in the CPA firms and the impact that that was having. And I thought I had a few different choices. I could either stay in similar roles within CPA firms, but it would potentially significantly shift from what I really enjoy doing, which is fine, but that was option one. Option two, I was thinking about going into private equity firms as an operating executive. Really seemed to line up pretty well with like the consulting aspect of things, and then 18 plus years at the time of experience in tax advisory, accounting firm leadership. And then I thought, well, what about parallel industries? Although I think I could work in any type of industry, the market sometimes feels differently about that. So I thought, well, what about other parallel industries within professional services like law firms? And I thought that would be really interesting. It would be, the right level of comfortable enough that I could actually do the role and feel like, I could actually do it and I'd get hired in these positions, and uncomfortable enough that there's a lot to learn and that would be stimulating to me. So that's kind of long story short there on how I decided on going into this space.
And a recruiter, I believe, gave you a phone call. Is that correct?
Yeah, so actually a recruiter that I had discussions with in the past when I was thinking about, where do I want to be going and looking at different opportunities, and I got a call. I've actually for every single one of my moves, that's kind of how it's happened.
Okay.
And it's funny how the universe, it's been at times that were very on point for me, where I felt like it was exactly the time where I needed to move on. And it's interesting, that whole process. But yeah, a recruiter reached out. It was a very thoughtful process in terms of what the firm was looking for. I could tell that they'd put a lot of thought into it, knew what they wanted, what they didn't want, and that was important to me at this point in my career too, to be in a place where they're ready for me and I'm ready for them, and it makes sense.
So you've been in the role for what, 2 years since you've
Two
joined?
years
2 years?
and 10 days and 3 hours. Yes.
So tell us, we're dying to hear. So what's the thing like? Tell us about legal service. Like, what's been the biggest surprise?
Honestly, it might be just no, it's not just linked to my firm because I've met many attorneys in the mid-market. Just I love how smart the attorneys are,
Mhm.
and quite frankly, within our firm, I mean, just great people,
Yeah.
great people. Um, it reminds me a lot of the accounting tax advisory space. I think these services are fascinating. I love how we can really focus on what makes the mid-market different from my perspective and kind of a firm like ours, just the entrepreneurial side of things, how creative we can be, right? In terms of where do we want to focus our strategy? How do we want to differentiate? I mean, there's just a lot of creativity, which I love and I didn't think that was necessarily going to be the case. Um, and just how quickly we could really drive change. Because I think there's a stigma or, I had some preconceived ideas that, within the law firm industry, it was going to be very like, slow to move things. And that's not been my experience, quite frankly. And even within other firms, I think, our mid-market, especially in New York and in the US, I mean, fantastic other peer firms and competitors, right? Who are super curious as to what we're doing and how we can work together and just a really positive energy. And yeah, that somewhat surprised me given what I'd heard about the industry.
And it's probably worth saying you hold the title of CEO of Moses Singer. Rebecca, could you tell us a little bit of your mission the past 2 years and then what you're looking at going forward?
Mhm. So really, year one for me, and I think it's important for anyone coming into a new role, is really to be mindful of learning, like really understanding why things were done a certain way, not assuming things, asking a ton of questions, like coming in as a consultant, basically, right, and really assessing where are things at. Even if I wanted to change something, it doesn't mean that it's, a, a, a big X on the past. It's more that it's sometimes something that made a ton of sense initially no longer makes sense because we're continuously evolving. I'm sure that in 2 years I'm going to change things that I did and put in place because it no longer makes sense. Like things have changed. So I think being really mindful of that. So I did kind of an initial um, kind of consulting assessment of everything, of all things, and really at the same time in parallel, building out those relationships, really understanding the people. And that's part of the process that I really do enjoy. It's kind of identifying individual skill sets, people who feel underutilized, what's their highest and best use, how can we position people differently to really have everyone feel that they can have an impact and lead a successful career at the firm and get that energy kind of going. So that was year one, and we kicked off also strategic planning, which did include also kind of identifying areas that were not strategic to us and kind of eliminating those areas. Right it's um, a really exciting time, but also a time for tough decisions, right? And really saying this is what we do and this is what we don't do, and this is what we expect, and this is kind of where our standard is, and this is kind of what it looks like to work at Moses Singer. So that was kind of year one. Made a few changes to also be sure that all of our policies, procedures, and infrastructure was incentivizing, or at least not disincentivizing what we're trying to do. So, for example, had a hard look at our compensation structure. Are we incentivizing the behaviors that we want to see, right? We want to diversify um, the concentration. We want to be sure that more, it's not just one or two big rainmakers. We want to kind of have a multitude of different areas that are flourishing and individuals who understand that they should be going out there and bringing in business and developing client relationships. We want to be sure that we're incentivizing client care. We want to be sure that we're incentivizing employee development, etc. So that was year one. And then now year two and plus plus is really a strong focus on continuing to refine that strategy and really achieving growth, and it's not growth for growth's sake. Sometimes you hear, oh, we want to just grow and grow and grow. It's really strategic growth to remain a mid-market, high-end, high added value boutique law firm in New York with national and international reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, what's been the rarest skill or the rarest characteristic that you wish there was more of at the firm as you continue that transformation of the business?
I'm going to give you a response that's very like it's a soft skill or whatever. We don't call it soft skills anymore, but you get what I mean. It's a non-technical skill. And it's not just within our firm. I think it's just in general what I see as like a huge advantage is that fire, that energy, that hunger, whatever word you want to use for drive that makes certain individuals continuously want to do better, continuously find a new
Mhm.
idea, right? That attribute to me is huge, because again, it's an understanding that we have technical excellence, that right, like all of the other attributes are kind of, that's why you have a job, right? But then the real thing that I look for is that, like, that energy.
So, Rebecca, you brought up private equity, and that is very much on Howard and I's radar. When it comes to law firm growth, we're seeing lots of happening in the CPA firms in the United States, and then obviously in the UK, there's a lot of things taking place, as well as in where you from France and other parts of Europe.
Hmm.
Um, can you share anecdotal advice, insight, things that maybe law firm executives who are listening today would benefit from uh, as this industry is very quietly entering the United States?
Yeah, and I think I'm passionate about this topic. I think it's super interesting to kind of look at the accounting space, where that's going, how it's going to continue to kind of consolidate and ultimately refragment. It's really interesting to watch from the inside and the outside, quite frankly. And I do think at some point, I mean, this isn't, you know, crystal ball, like we all see it, with the alternative law firm structures and,
Hmm.
the Arizona practices. We know that at some point this is going to come into the US. What I would say is, oftentimes there's kind of an opportunity that meets a need. Um, and what I'm mindful of is being sure that it's kind of the concept of, you never go shopping when you're hungry, right? Like, you're
Right.
not going to get the right things. You're just going to walk away with like two Twix bars and I don't know, marshmallows or something. So
Speak
it's
for
kind of that.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I know you guys are better than that. We're better than this. Um, but basically, it's kind of that concept is that it's a risk if firms are kind of waiting. They don't deal with their succession issues. They don't deal with their investment in technology. They don't deal with all these things. And then they kind of say, oh, private equity's here. It's great. We're going to get a huge influx of cash and an investment. And it's kind of the holy grail of a solution. I think, I think it can be really interesting if it's done the right way, if there's a true understanding, or
Mm.
at least a true partnership between P and the firms in question, right? Of like understanding the industry, or a P firm that really understands the industry, and a real strategic alliance around the firm in question getting that infusion of cash, understanding who they are, where they're at, what their strategy is, and having a really strong foundation to stand on before that happens. So I don't have black or white thoughts on it, but I think there are key success factors that can set you up for it to be done right. And when I say be done right, what I mean by that is that it impacts clients in a constructive and positive way, right? That client service doesn't suffer, that it attracts, retains, and develops your individuals, your partners, your attorneys, in a way that you would want. Um, that's really what I'm speaking to. That it's, because you could always hit the EBITDA numbers, right? But
Hmm.
ultimately, that it's in line with your vision, mission, and culture of the firm. Because ultimately, where this ultimately goes, like who's going to repurchase these firms and how that kind of cycle recycles. The most important is your client impact and your employee impact.
Yep.
Does that resonate with you guys in terms of
Yeah,
what
I
you're
think
seeing? Or
I think I think I've heard the term like future proofing the organization,
yeah,
basically. So
yeah,
that makes a whole lot of sense, and
yeah.
that fits into the
That's a good word.
that fits into the strategy of the business, basically, right?
Yeah, and straight, it's one of those back to basics kind of thing of most firms don't necessarily do it, especially if they're thinking, oh, we're going to go in with private equity. They're like, all right, we're not going to we're not going to fix anything else because this is the solution.
It's a savior. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
savior
yeah.
versus, hey,
That's
how
right.
could we set ourselves up strategically and then to become that anchor firm, right? To become that firm potentially. And by the way, that's not something that when I'm speaking about this, I'm speaking about it in terms of, Rebecca Goodman-Stephens as, this is my thoughts on PE. It's not something that we're actively considering or looking into. It's just, I think, as part of my role, I need to be out there understanding what's going on and
Hmm.
understanding parallel industries too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we
Uh,
very much want to remain an independent entrepreneur. Just all of the benefits of being an entrepreneurial independent, boutique is not something that we want to give up.
Are you at least entertaining, again, getting ready, the partnership ready for those discussions internally? Not obviously activating any kind of private equity button, but as you say, future-proofing the business, doing the
Oh,
basics
absolutely.
right. It's part of the whole redevelopment of the progression of the
I
firm.
think it's the same strategy that you need to implement if you are planning on, similar within the accounting space. If you're planning on being PE backed or not, it's the same strategy because to be able to survive and be sustainable, you need to future proof the organization. You need to be upskilling your employees. You need to be thinking ahead in terms of what the tech stack is and what the um, processes and what that looks like, how the talent model's shifting. Like all of those things are it's not that we're having discussions. I mean, it's day to day woven into absolutely every single thing that we're doing, quite frankly. I don't use the word future proofing because I think people will be like, all right, that's it. That's one business word too many. But I think we're definitely doing it daily.
So, Rebecca, I think I heard a rumor you guys are starting a podcast. Is that correct?
We are. We're starting a podcast. I don't know what the ETA is because I
Mhm.
did not anticipate how challenging it would be to find a name for this podcast. And as we have a very competent and amazing IP group, they're helping us navigate, being sure that we get the right name and we're doing things by the book, obviously. Um,
What are you guys hoping to
but
talk about?
well, really, the focus is going to be all about business. It's what's super important to me and to us as a firm is that what makes us different, or we like to think what makes us different, is that we understand our clients' business. We understand their industries. We understand what they do, and if we don't, we want to learn, right? Um, we understand that legal services as a standalone are just, it's like being book smart. That's not super helpful in the day to day, right? It's helpful if you're having a conceptual philosophical debate, but it's not helpful if you're trying to help a client out of a situation or into a situation. Um, so it's very much a focus on businesses, speaking with various business leaders. It could be clients, prospects, peer firms, on what's on their mind, how they're thinking about their business. Um, that's really what it is. It's all about the business.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to hearing those episodes as you guys produce them and get those out. Um, so, knowing that you are a resident here in New York, or you come to the office and all of that, I would love to wax eloquent a little bit about New York. About you mentioned you love the people and the energy and the possibilities here. Do you have a bucket list this summer? Are there things you're looking forward to, or um, any places you're
Yeah.
hoping to hit up?
Well, there always is. So I very much, even in terms of business development and client development, I love to do different types of activities. I know, there's traditional golf that some individuals enjoy. I do not. I'm more into kind of spa life and wellness, so I look forward to
Okay.
doing that. I always look forward to discovering new spa locations and things like that.
Do you go to the spa
Um,
on Governor's Island?
I do. I love I actually did an executive women's event at the spa on
Oh,
Governor's
did you?
Island.
Very good.
Yep, and I have some business ideas for them actually, that I might share with them at some point, in terms of how their business model's evolving. But yeah, I love that spa. So I look forward to doing that. And like I said, I have a mindset eye of a tourist, so I very much kind of love discovering new things about New York. Very much a foodie, so I love discovering new restaurants, and I'm actually I have a whole bucket list of vegan and vegetarian places, and one of them I think you
Ah,
have to take your shoes off. So I'm getting
ooh,
psyched up for that one.
okay.
Rebecca, that
And
sounds hardcore.
it does, right? I'm not sure we'll make it through the the appetizers, but we'll see. So that's one, and then just spending time with my family and
Mhm.
friends. When you live in New York, you become very popular. So a lot of my family is coming to visit, um, and just really hanging out with the family and the kids, and just enjoying. being in the moment, quite frankly. Yeah. I have US bucket list, but that's longer term. There are specific cities I really want to visit. But yeah, for this summer, it's just staying local and enjoying family, food, and spa life.
And do you ever go back to the UK on a frequent basis, or?
I haven't really. I mean, I used to have a lot of travel related to business, and I'm trying to be pretty strategic in terms of how I spend my time because, when you travel, you go out for, a few days of a conference, it becomes a whole week, and that's a
Yeah,
whole week of time you're not here, right? In
yeah.
terms of just keeping things moving and keeping the energy going. So I don't generally go back, and like I said, a lot of people like to come here, which is perfect. Um, I do, I still do some work travel, but a little bit more limited. And quite frankly, I have the opposite desire. I sometimes feel like I've traveled so much in my life that National Geographic does a really good job, you know? And I can just stay home. That's how I feel about some things. Like I have more of a desire to be anchored and kind of be home and kind of be with the family than to be out and about at this point in my
Well,
life.
you have a large amount of kids, right? So, right,
I've
it's a
yes, we
big
have five
family.
kids with my
Yes.
husband. Actually, he's an artist and has an art gallery in Hoboken. This is some of his
Oh,
artwork on the walls behind me. Can't really
that's
see it, but my husband's artwork. And yeah, we have five kids together. So yeah, we're we don't get too bored. We're busy and enjoy that. And that's also always learning, right? You can't not be always learning when you have kids. They're there to kind of challenge and check us
It's
constantly.
it's good for the negotiation skills.
I don't know. I feel like they've won. That's how I feel.
I refer to
But
all of them as terrorists.
they are, quite frankly. But then I say to myself, they really have the skills and the character that we wanted them to have to navigate this world, right?
Good for
And
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
Good
so
for you.
excellent.
yeah.
Well, Rebecca, how can people find you, contact you, follow you on social media?
When we prepared this, I was like, do not follow me. But I think basically I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do any other social media. I'm pretty it's all business with me. So I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. Yeah, and I'm happy to connect. You can kind of see what's going on at the firm and what we're thinking about.
Very good. Well,
Wonderful.
Rebecca, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys so much. Thank you. And I'll invite you onto my podcast too if you'd like to join.
Wow.
That
When
would
we
be
do
fun.
that.
Fantastic.
That would be fun.
I know you've been dying for that invitation, of course. So once we have the name, I'll let you know.
Great.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.